Hello horror movie lovers, I'm Trenton and I love movies just like you, obviously. So I watched Hereditary because I just wanted to watch a popular fun family movie that both children and adults would love and appreciate. My expectations were high. I've seen this movie so many times, but just felt like rewatching it recently to see if I felt the same way I did when I watched it all the other times. Because opinions can change. But did the movie meet my expectations? Yes. Oh my god, this movie is so damn good.
So everyone's entitled to one good scare.
When Ellen, the matriarch of the Graham family, passes away, her daughter's family begins to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry. The first half of this video will be spoiler free, then the last half will contain spoilers. Don't worry, I will give you a warning before we enter spoiler territory. The characters are very much disturbed, whether it's directly or indirectly. Charlie was a strange little individual, very strange. Didn't like nor dislike their character. Steve was the most likable character out of the family. Shit, the most likable character in the entire movie. I was feeling so bad for him specifically, but I feel like that's a universal feeling though. Joan was nothing to me, absolutely nothing. I hate Joan. We hate Joan on this channel. Her. Peter was definitely not really the most likable character out of the family. Not unlikable enough for me to want his character dead, but just annoyingly unlikable. Annie was the most flawed of them all. Holy shit. But can you blame her? The family trauma and grief she went through is absolutely insane and heartbreaking. Like how she didn't herself is beyond me. The story is simple yet complex, but effective nonetheless. You're pretty much just following a family spiraling mentally for 2 hours. I love this story. I love simple yet complex stories that deal with subject matter that isn't so black and white, in this case grief. This movie is obviously depressing. The writing is also good. When it comes to the character dynamics, you can definitely tell that there is some baggage in this family, hostility also. I just kind of wish we got a better understanding of what the family was like before Annie's mother died, because I mean the movie literally starts off with them going to the funeral, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is a spoiler or anything, but I just wanted to see maybe what everybody was like before Annie's mother's death, but it makes sense that it wasn't shown, and for the viewer to just be placed into this grieving family's life. I understand it and appreciate it as well. The cinematography is also great. Pretty much every technical aspect about this movie is perfect. There really isn't even much to say that hasn't already been said by other people that you haven't heard already. The effects are used sparingly, but when they are used, they are very gnarly. I loved it, of course. They're all practical as well, which is always a plus. I feel like the fact that all the gore and violence was used so sparingly and was spaced out throughout the movie made it so much more effective and jarring whenever moments like that did happen. The tone is dark as hell, pitch black. Everything about this movie is depressing. The subject matter, the characters, the story, the decisions the characters make, the overall atmosphere, just everything about this movie is so damn depressing and dark thematically and technically. If you somehow haven't seen the movie already, just know that this will most likely have you down. The pacing is on the slower side. The movie is just over 2 hours. I personally don't feel it every time I watch the movie, but I could definitely see how someone with a shorter attention span may find this movie to be slow or too boring. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I feel like that's kind of a staple with A24 horror as a whole. Not being afraid to be weird, strange, slow, or to take their time when it actually comes to storytelling, which is obviously not going to be for everyone, but it is for me. The life lesson that I learned after watching Hereditary was that we are all going to die. Overall, I love this movie. I've seen it many times, plus I have the screenplay book as well, so I've seen it many times and read it many times. I love this movie. I'm gonna give Hereditary a 10 out of 10. We are now entering spoiler territory. If you haven't seen Hereditary, watch it, then come back to the video, or if you simply don't care about spoilers, keep on watching. In this portion of the video, I break down the movie, go more in depth with my likes and dislikes, as well as my favorite scene, favorite kill, and least favorite kill. Again, we are now entering spoiler territory. Miniature artist Annie Graham lives with her psychiatrist husband, Steve, their 16-year-old son, Peter, and their 13-year-old daughter, Charlie. The family attends the funeral of Annie's secretive mother, Ellen, at which Annie is surprised at the number number of mourners in attendance. She attends a bereavement support group, revealing her troubled childhood and that she and her mother had a fraught relationship until Charlie was born, when Ellen became a significant figure in raising her. Meanwhile, Steve receives a phone call telling him that unknown perpetrators desecrated Ellen's gravesite, but does not reveal this to Annie. Peter is invited to a party, to which Annie insists that Charlie go with him. At the party, Peter leaves Charlie unattended. She eats cake containing walnuts, which triggers her severe nut allergy, sending her into anaphylactic shock. As Peter drives Charlie to the hospital, she leans out of the window for air. When Peter swerves to avoid a dead deer lying in the road, she is accidentally decapitated by a telephone pole. In shock, Peter drives home and leaves Charlie's headless body in the backseat of his parents' car, which Annie discovers to her horror the following morning. This scene, oh my god, it gets me every single time. Like, oh my god. The family is fractured following Charlie's funeral. Peter becomes reclusive and racked with guilt over his sister's death. Annie becomes bitter and resentful towards Peter for his involvement in the accident, and Steve tries to mediate peace between them. Annie befriends a support group member named Joan, who teaches Annie to perform a seance to communicate with Charlie's ghost. Later that night, Annie convinces her family to attempt the seance. Objects begin to move and smash, and Peter is terrified when Annie is possessed and speaks in Charlie's voice until Steve throws water on her. As Peter begins to be haunted by supernatural forces, Annie suspects Charlie's spirit has become vengeful and demonic. When she sees images manifesting in Charlie's sketchbook threatening Peter, she throws the book into the fireplace. However, her clothing goes up in flames at the same time as the book does. Her clothes only stop burning when she pulls the book away from the flames. Annie goes through her mother's old belongings and finds a photo album that shows Ellen to have been Queen Lay, the leader of a coven, and Joan one of her acolytes. Another book describes the demon king Payman, who wishes to inhabit the body of a male host. The summoner of Payman will receive wealth and rewards. In the attic, Annie finds Ellen's rotting, decapitated body and occultist runes drawn in blood. While Peter is outside his school, Joan appears and attempts to expel his spirit from his body for the demon king. In class, Peter is taken over by an unseen force and slams his head against the desk, breaking his nose. Annie informs Steve of her ties to Charlie's sketchbook and begs him to burn it, as she cannot bring herself to take her own life. When he refuses, believing Annie has gone insane, she snatches the book from him and flings it into the fire, only for Steve to burst into flames instead. Annie watches in horror, but her expression grows blank as she is taken over by the same force that possessed Peter earlier. As naked coven members begin gathering both inside and around the house, Peter wakes after dark and finds his father's charred corpse, then quickly notices one of the coven members in a nearby doorway. A now possessed Annie then chases him through the house. He attempts to hide in the attic. Annie follows him and then beheads herself with a piece of piano wire. Peter jumps from the attic window, dying upon impact with the ground. A glowing orb enters and reanimates his body, now displaying Charlie's mannerisms. He follows Annie's floating, headless corpse into Charlie's treehouse, where Joan and other members of the coven, as well as the headless corpses of Peter's mother and grandmother, are worshipping a mannequin with Charlie's crowned, severed head placed on it. Joan removes the crown and places it on Peter's head, addressing him as Charlie. She then proclaims that Peter is Payman, having corrected his female body and given him his preferred male host. Then the movie ends. The whole scene with Peter being forced to take Charlie to the high school party, which ultimately results in Charlie getting decapitated by the phone pole, was nasty work. Nasty, nasty work. I wish I could experience this scene for the first time again, because I remember being absolutely flabbergasted. Like, what the just happened? The third act shift was also very shocking. Throughout the movie, you couldn't necessarily tell if what was taking place was supernatural up until the third act starts. When I tell you, my heart and jaw was on the floor and I felt like I was on the verge of a panic attack. Gosh, I wish I could experience this movie for the first time again. The movie ending with evil winning was great. I feel like the ending that they went with the whole transfer of Payman going exactly according to plan, with Payman taking over Peter's body, was so fitting and made sense with the previous events that took place in a movie and kept the bleak, depressing, dreadful, and hopeless tone. I loved it. The effects were great. The moments that always come to mind when thinking about this movie are the aftermath of Charlie when their head was in the road, Steve accidentally being engulfed in flames, Annie floating around the house in the third act, which looked very uncanny, especially since there wasn't any indication earlier that she would end up possessed temporarily, crawling on walls and floating around her property and shit, as well as Charlie's head on the statue in the treehouse. I really wish A24 sold life-size shrines like that on their shop. Would probably be like $500+, but I might have just had to sell something on the dark web to obtain it. I need it in my room. There's probably more moments as well, but to be honest, it's 3:30 a.m. in the morning. My brain is fried. My favorite scene would have to be the whole third act shift, revealing to the viewer that this is a supernatural story. The reveal was so shocking and jarring. Again, I loved it. My least favorite scene would have to be towards the beginning when Peter's in class staring at the butt of the girl sitting in front of him. I understand it's supposed to set up his character and the type of person he is, but I didn't really care for it. I'm stuck between Steve and Charlie's deaths being my favorite kill because both of their deaths are so shocking, but actually I'ma say both were my favorite kill. Both were misdirects with nobody expecting Charlie to die so early in the movie, if at all, and Steve just completely catching a stray was so unfortunate. My least favorite kill would have to be Peter's death, him jumping out of the window after seeing those naked elderly people in his attic and accidentally dying from it. It made sense for him to do that, but the death itself wasn't as effective as the others in the movie. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos from me, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. Alright, horror movie lovers, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.